It was a Tuesday when Daniel decided he was finally ready. He'd been at Mercer and Holt for 3 years. 3 years of staying late when no one asked, covering projects that weren't his, and watching two people with less tenure quietly move up the ladder. He had his numbers prepared, a market salary report printed from LinkedIn, a list of contributions, not vague ones, real ones, with dates. He'd rehearsed in the bathroom mirror that morning. He felt good about it. His manager, Reeves, listened, nodded a few times, said the word noted twice, then said the budget cycle was already locked, and the right time to have this conversation would have been back in Q4. Daniel hadn't known there was a Q4 window. Nobody told him. He thanked Reeves, walked back to his desk, and spent the next 20 minutes staring at a spreadsheet without reading it. That conversation felt like it went nowhere, but it didn't go nowhere. It just went somewhere Daniel couldn't see. There is a version of the raise conversation that most people imagine. You make the case, they review the case, and the outcome is either yes or no. Rational, clean, symmetrical. That version exists somewhere, but the version that most people actually experience is different. And the difference isn't about how well you prepared or how strong your case was. The difference is about what the conversation signals, separate from its content. When you ask for a raise, you are doing two things simultaneously. You are presenting a financial argument, and you are also revealing information about how you feel about the company, how long you intend to stay, what your outside options might be, and whether you are becoming a flight risk or a loyalty problem. These are two entirely different conversations, and your manager is often more focused on the second one. Most people believe that a well-reasoned raise request will be evaluated on its merits. This belief is not wrong. It is just incomplete. Organizations do not process compensation requests the way individuals process arguments. They process them the way systems process disruptions. The question is not only, is this person worth more? The question is also, what does this request tell us about this person's state of mind? And what does saying yes or no do to the system around them? This is not cynical. It is structural. Managers often have limited discretion over budgets. Approvals require layers. Timelines are fixed. And that means even a legitimate, well-documented request can arrive in the wrong quarter, hit the wrong sequence of approvals, or land with a manager who has no room to move, even if they wanted to. But the request still leaves a mark. Daniel had done something that felt rational and came with receipts. But from where Reeves was sitting, the conversation opened a file, not a formal file, not a disciplinary one, something more like a mental category, the category that says, this person's expectations may be misaligned. This person might be testing the water before they leave. This person has started counting. None of this is necessarily fair, but it is the reality of how perception shifts after certain conversations. The raise request doesn't just ask a question, it starts a clock. And depending on how the organization responds, or fails to respond, that clock changes the relationship in ways that are hard to walk back. What almost no one explains before this conversation happens is the concept of leverage timing. Leverage is not just about what you have, it's about when you're having it is most visible and most difficult to replace. The moment of maximum leverage in a compensation conversation is not the moment you decide to ask. It is the moment the organization realizes, on its own, that losing you would be expensive. Those are different moments, and asking too early, before the organization has done that math, does something specific. It transfers the urgency from them to you. Once you've named what you want, the pressure shifts. They know you want it, they know you're watching, and they can now choose to give it, delay it, or let the discomfort quietly motivate you to leave, which, in organizations with overstacked headcount, can be a solved problem rather than a crisis. This is the trap that almost no career advice explains. Not that asking is wrong, but that asking from the wrong position, at the wrong time, without the right architecture around the request, changes the information landscape in ways that weaken rather than strengthen your position. 5 weeks after his conversation with Reeves, Daniel noticed something. He wasn't being treated differently in any obvious way. Reeves still nodded at him in hallways, still CC'd him on the right threads. But a project he'd expected to take over, a product expansion initiative that had been informally discussed with him twice, was quietly assigned to someone else. No explanation or conversation. It was just gone from his trajectory and added to someone else's. He couldn't prove a connection. He wasn't sure there was one. But something had shifted, subtle, slow, and entirely unannounced. This is often how it plays out. Not dramatic retaliation or a formal consequence. Just a quiet realignment of opportunity, a recalibration of who gets what next, happening in conversations he wasn't in, about calculations he couldn't see. The question isn't whether you should ever ask for a raise. The question is whether you understand what the ask actually does to the system, and whether your timing and positioning account for that. There are conditions under which a raise request functions as intended, where it accelerates a conversation the organization was already quietly having, where the leverage is real and visible, where the manager has room to move and a reason to want to. In those conditions, asking works. But the conditions matter more than the preparation. You can have a perfect business case and deliver it into a moment where it lands as a warning sign rather than a negotiation. And once it lands that way, the case itself becomes secondary. Daniel eventually got a raise. 4 months later, during a review cycle, a modest one, smaller than he'd researched. Reeves presented it as something the company had decided on its own. Maybe they had. He accepted it, said thank you, and sat with the quiet knowledge that he had spent 4 months watching what a single conversation had moved, and what it hadn't. Some people learn this lesson and decide the answer is to never ask, to simply wait for the organization to recognize them on its own schedule. That lesson is also wrong. The actual lesson is narrower and harder to hold. The ask is not the conversation. The ask is a signal. What you're really managing is what that signal tells them, and whether what it tells them makes them want to keep you or just wait to see if you'll solve their problem for them. The raise is not a question with an answer. It's a move in a longer game, and the players who understand the game tend to move differently.